Valve just teased the Steam Deck 2. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Deck Ready, the channel all about Steam Decks and recently other handheld PCs. Today I literally just sat down to film a video with this, the Aya Neo Air. I did not get the influencer package that everyone else got, and mine is supposedly coming in the mail soon. But in the meantime, I figured I'd borrow this from my friend Austin Evans and do a little first impressions video. Unfortunately, I did not get anything with it from them, just this. And I don't have a charger for it here at the office, and it is dead, and none of the chargers I had in my bag worked. So I got a few seconds of playtime with this thing, and right when I booted up Destiny 2, it died. So I'm gonna mess around with this a little bit more over the weekend, and I will have a full video for you next week. But first impressions are pretty good, just from a look and feel perspective. This is a big improvement from this, the first handheld PC I ever got my hands on, the Aya Neo Next. This broke within 3 days. Literally just playing it, the trigger broke. I took it apart, tried to do everything I could to fix it, and thankfully this feels much more durable and like a huge improvement in every way. The OLED screen looks incredible. But yeah, I'll have a full impressions video coming in the next few days. In the meantime, I was saved by Valve themselves, who released a really cool book about the Steam Deck. It basically runs down the history of Valve and how they evolved from being a software company into hardware. It's really interesting. And right on the very second to last page, page 26 of 27, they go right into it and tease the Steam Deck 2. They talk about the future of this device, and it's pretty detailed. It's not even like a hinting thing. They just straight up say it. I'm not gonna read the whole quote, but I love their language in this line. They say, anyway, this is a multi-generational product line. Valve will support Steam Deck and SteamOS well into the foreseeable future, and we will build new versions to be even more open and capable than the first version of the Steam Deck has been. And right at the end, they explicitly ask to know what people want in the next version of the Steam Deck. So yeah, I mean, we could kind of piece this together over the past few months of updates about the Steam Deck. They have put so much effort into making sure SteamOS has been upgraded pretty much week by week. And every time they kind of screw some things up when they move it to stable, they have a new beta fix right there, right away to fix things. I mean, it's happened to me. It's happened to my friend Fan the Deck. We have specifically asked for features in our videos or updates to come to the Steam Deck, and it's like seriously within a week some of those features have been added to SteamOS. Overall, I'm still really impressed with the device. I use it literally every day. I'm playing through Hollow Knight right now, and it's just like a perfect experience on this thing top to bottom. And I know some people are gonna look at this and say, wow, they're already working on the Steam Deck 2. I haven't even gotten my pre-order to come up for the Steam Deck 1. Like, what's going on there? I think it's going to be at least a couple years before we even hear any sort of announcement of a Steam Deck 2, mainly because of the whole supply chain thing. They still have so many pre-orders to get through, and I think they're going to be cognizant of the fact that there's people who aren't going to get their Steam Decks until well into next year. So if they came and turned around with a new Steam Deck by the end of next year, that would feel like what Aya does with these devices, where they come out with something new and drastically better every 6 months, to the point where people who pre-ordered this, the Aya Neo Next, still don't have it, and now you can already spend $600 on this, the Aya Neo Air. I love how fast they come up with new tech, but if they were a little bit slower with this stuff, I feel like we could get even bigger advancements from the chips inside, because from everything I've seen, this doesn't run that much better than this, and they look completely different, even from a hardware perspective. And the coolest part of the book for me is on page 12, where they show every single prototype this device has had. Now, at the beginning of the book, they said that their journey with the Steam Deck started 10 years ago, but what I think they kind of are talking about is they made the Steam controller, where they had to make Steam input. And then they made Steam machines, where they learned how to make their own version of Linux available on a bunch of different devices, and that's what ultimately got them to the point where they made Proton, which allows them to essentially emulate Windows on the Steam Deck, and that's how we have what we have today. They also talk about the Valve Index and how from that device, they learned how to get incredible audio, which I've only played with the Valve Index once or twice, and the audio is really good, but the audio is so impressive on the Steam Deck. From these two little stereo speakers that are on the front of the device, they're like the best handheld speakers, and honestly, some of the best built-in speakers I've ever heard. I have the 16-inch MacBook Pro right now, and this thing, the Steam Deck, stands up to that, which is crazy when you consider how much more room there is to work with inside the MacBook. When I started this channel, the only handheld PC I had experience with was this, the Aya Neo Next. It's got a good layout for a device like this. It has the Joy-Con layout of the sticks, which I know some people like. I personally don't because it kind of cramps my right thumb down here. But if you're making a handheld, this is like the bare bones basic way to do it. And now that I've had experience with the Steam Deck and I messed around with the Aya Neo Air a little bit, I have the Switch Lite, I have the Switch OLED. The one that feels the most comfortable in my hands and has stood the test of time is the Steam Deck. My hands don't get sweaty. This thing doesn't really overheat. It feels good to actually use the controls because of the Wii U style placement of the sticks. And I think that's really coming down to the fact that Valve prototyped so many different versions of this before they actually shipped. And when you look at the philosophy of the Steam Deck's development versus the philosophy of the Aya Neo, you can really see why this thing is standing the test of time when I put it against these other handhelds that I've messed with. It's because they prototyped it. They worked on a bunch of different revisions until they felt like it was as close to perfect as it could be, and then they released it. I feel like with Aya, if you want the bleeding edge of handheld PC technology, you can get one of these devices and you will get something that will definitely work out of the box. It'll be durable, it'll stand the test of time most likely, but you're gonna have some caveats like this thing. When I was downloading Destiny 2 earlier at my desk, it was hot to the touch to the point where when I picked it up, I thought I might be getting a burn for a second, so I immediately dropped it like an inch onto my desk. Like, this thing gets extremely hot, which is an issue that the Steam Deck just generally doesn't have. They also had a line in this book where they said the chip inside the Steam Deck is the most powerful chip you can get in a handheld right now, and after using these devices, I completely agree. I've seen a bunch of videos on this thing so far before I actually got my hands on it, so I know it will run Elden Ring right at the lowest settings and kind of hover around 30 frames per second. You can get 20 to 30 frames per second out of Spider-Man Remastered. Decent performance across the board, but if you look at the chip that's inside the Steam Deck, which I'll remind you is much cheaper than the Aya Neo Air, but if you look at the performance of the Steam Deck, it's really night and day how well this thing runs games, and that's crazy when you consider that it's using an emulated sort of version of Windows to do it, whereas this and this have built-in Windows 11. I've done a pretty detailed video on what I'd like to see in an eventual Steam Deck 2, and most of it is very simple changes. I would obviously love the cheaper model to have a bigger SSD, but this thing was so easy to upgrade to a 1 terabyte drive internally and then paired with my 1 terabyte SD card, I'm totally fine. That feels like a minor inconvenience at this point. I would like a little bit more durability because I see posts on the subreddit all the time where the bumpers and the triggers specifically are a little bit fragile, especially if you're dropping this thing. Everywhere else on the device is pretty durable, but there are a few FedEx cases where you see people get the brand new Steam Deck and it's got cracks down the entire screen. And I don't think that's Valve's fault really, because they ship it inside the case, inside a box. It's more down to FedEx's handling of the package, but still a little bit more durability across the board would be appreciated. And of course, I really want to see an OLED screen. I think the resolution of 800p is just fine. They can stick with that. It looks great at this size, and I never really even see the soft edges that you normally get with a lower resolution screen. It's just such a small screen, you don't really see it. But having OLED would be so awesome. Even if they have to make it a feature that's only included in the most expensive model, like give us an internal terabyte of storage, an OLED screen, and keep that etched glass. On a Steam Deck 2, now that I'm convinced Valve is actually going to stick with this device, I will buy the most expensive Steam Deck 2 instead of what I did with this one, which is get the 256 gigabyte version, upgrade the SSD myself, and then I got the Mag Glass anti-glare screen protector, which, you know, is kind of like almost there. It's not exactly quite as good as the etched glass you get from Valve. But yeah, hindsight being 2020, kind of wish I went with the highest tier model of Steam Deck, but in the future, I'd love to see an OLED screen. And with that OLED screen, I'd like to see the overall footprint of the device shrunk down just a bit and have the bezels be much smaller. If you're someone who has the original Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch OLED, you'll know exactly what I mean, because the difference between that is night and day. Even removing the OLED screen, like that high quality, nice color screen, it still looks much better than the original Switch, mainly because of the removed bezel. So while I don't think the bezels are horrible or anything like that, like you don't look at them and go, oh, those are terrible bezels. I think that's one area where they could just improve the thing overall, which is what the whole point of this video is. So yeah, I'm not really knocking the Steam Deck. I'm just saying in the future, I'd like OLED and I would like less bezels. And now that I've experienced both type of joysticks joystick. I think going forward, whether it's the DualSense, the Series X controller, the Elite Series 3, the Steam Deck 2, the Steam Controller 2, if they are working on one, every controller with a joystick should use Hall sensors. Having that magnetic joystick has not degraded on performance in any way. Like, it feels just like a regular old joystick, but having the peace of mind knowing that I'm never going to get stick drift on the thing really helps. Seeing that that technology is viable and does work, that's what I like, and I would like to see that in the Steam Deck too. And it's crazy to think that there's a company out there already producing Hall sensor joysticks that if you want to do some soldering, you can connect the wires yourself to make them capacitive like the built-in Steam Deck joysticks. That's cool. That just shows us it can be done. So I'm going to say in a future iteration, it should be done. And as far as general hardware goes, we've heard rumors for a few months now that Valve has been working on a new headset, a new VR headset that's standalone like the Oculus Quest 2. It has the code name allegedly of Deckard, and it's going to have some sort of functionality with the Steam Deck in some way. I'd love to see them start making some accessories. I know I got some pushback on this in the video where I talked about accessories I want, but after hearing the speakers in this and hearing people talk about the speakers in the Valve Index, I just want Valve to make a gaming headset to end all gaming headsets. I have a lot of experience with headsets. I have the AirPods Max, those are pretty good. I have the Razer Black Shark V2, that's my main gaming headset. I love that headset, it's just okay, I just like that it's black. I have the Sony InZone H9. I really didn't like that headset, other than the sound quality being great. I will ditch all of these in a second for a Valve official pair of headphones. Imagine what they can do with a full-sized pair of cans. Like, oh my God, I mean, with this small, they can make a great set of earbuds, and I would buy that as well. But if you're one of those people who's just sitting there clutching your Nintendo Switch or your Ion Odin Pro or your Ion Neo Air or Next, and you're like, Valve won't stick with this thing, they'll abandon it just like they did with the Steam Link or the Steam Controller. Valve just put out a huge statement that gives me total peace of mind and makes me totally believe them when they say that this thing is their future going forward. The first part is we have an update on the last update they did where they said they've been making more Steam Decks than they thought they were going to have at this point. So people who were in Q4 have been bumped up to Q3, which is awesome on itself. They say they're making more Steam Decks than ever. But the follow-up tweet they have is what's really interesting. They say another fun stat, the number of Steam Deck reservations being made on a daily basis continues to grow and is at the highest since our launch earlier this year. So this is interesting because with a lot of devices, you see that initial hype period, right? When something is announced and available for pre-order, that's when you start to see the highest hype point of a device. And then it slowly tapers off until maybe the mid-gen refresh when they have the PS5 Slim. And then you'll see another uptick in people being able to grab them. And then it'll taper off until the PS6 starts to roll around or the PS5 Pro. With this device, the Steam Deck, we're seeing something interesting where people pre-ordered it a bunch day one. And now here we are a year later and people are pre-ordering this thing more than they ever have before. Now, I'm not entirely positive. I don't remember if Valve ever shut down pre-orders at some point or if they just continued to take that $5 deposit as 2022 went on. But either way, it's super promising that people are seeing the reviews, they're seeing the YouTube videos, they're seeing people play on the Steam Deck, they're seeing Spider-Man Remastered and Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate come out being Steam Deck verified and putting it in their like marketing materials, and they're saying, oh, Valve is actually committed to this thing. It's not just an experiment. I want to get in on this because this is a really cool way to play games. It doesn't seem like we have long to wait until Valve is going to release SteamOS 3 for everyone to download and try on their own PCs. And I think that's going to be a huge moment for both PC gaming in general, Steam, and the Steam Deck. I think that's where it truly breaks into the mainstream. Because as we've seen with Elden Ring, some games genuinely run better on SteamOS, and that's why I want to have a partition on my main Windows gaming PC where I can log into SteamOS and play games that run better there on that operating system. And if more people are using SteamOS on devices like the Ion Neo Air, or they're using it on their main PC, that gives Valve some really awesome leverage to head back to Epic Games or to head back to Bungie and say, look, you need to get your games running on SteamOS. I really want to play Destiny 2 on the Steam Deck, and I really don't want to install Windows on the Steam Deck. That is like the internal battle in my head. I have an SD card that has Windows 11 on it. I just don't think Windows 11 is as suited to be on a handheld as SteamOS is, because SteamOS was literally built to run on a handheld.